What up, what up, what up? This is Big D coming to you from another episode of The Hell You Think, which is my new podcast. Hope everybody enjoy it. If you got comments, please comment below. Subscribe to my YouTube, subscribe to my Instagram, my Facebook, all that good old stuff, and my Spotify. Today we're going to talk to you about, should you forget where you came from? It's a phrase we all often hear almost at least once a week, at least once a year, at least once a month. We all hear the phrase, should you forget where you came from? Never forget where you came from. So we're going to jump right into it. Some of us, man, we want to forget where we came from because, believe it or not, man, it for some people, man, it was a rough time. It was the roughest time in their life where they don't want to remember where they came from because everybody didn't grow up with fond memories and in a joyful life and a happy kid, as a happy kid, or growing up as getting what they wanted for Christmas, or getting what they wanted for their birthday, or even just growing up with a good relationship with their parents or their grandparents or their family. Some of us want to forget where we came from because they may have been abused, or they may have grew up in a broken home that they don't want to remember where they came from. And maybe sometimes it's best that they don't remember where they came from because they want to try to block that memory out of their mind. Everybody didn't grow up with a fun childhood or something they can relate to and talk about that's memorable as a kid. I was talking to a female co-worker of mine, and she said, I hate when everybody says, don't ever forget where you came from. And I was like, well, and I was trying to explain to her, well, people often say that because they grew up not having what they wanted in life, and they grew up, they like to look back at things and say, hey, I remember when I didn't have this or I didn't have that, as far as materialistic things, and now look what I got. And sometimes they were like, hey man, this is what we used to eat when we was growing up. We used to eat this, and we didn't have enough to afford this, that, and the other, but we still had a fun childhood and in a loving family. So then what she explained to me is, she explained to me that she never wants to remember where she came from because it was the worst part of her life. So when she broke it down to me, she was like, Derek, you got to understand that when I grew up in a broken home. I grew up in a home that my mom, she was on drugs, and at one point in her life, she'd leave me in the house by myself, and I was only like 7 or 8 years old, and I might not see her for like 2 days at a time. And then when I did see her, she would the only time I would see her is when she would bring me something to eat, and then she right back in the streets. And she was heavily on drugs, so I can understand why she don't want to remember, why she wants to forget where she came from, because everybody didn't have that simple life growing up. Some of us had an abusive relationship with our parents or our grandparents or uncles or whoever in your family, and some of us it was a dark time in our life growing up. So I can understand now when she put it like that, when she says, I want to forget where I came from because it was not a good feeling. It was a dark place in my life. But at the same time, she also explained to me that it made her stronger. It made her a stronger individual and a stronger person. And it helped her to realize that she don't have to remember that if she doesn't want to, even though she can't block that out of her mind completely. There are memories, but The only thing she can say is that she learned from it, and she promised not to allow her kids to go through that same experience that she went through. So it really helped her to be a stronger and a better parent than what her parents were. So it kind of had me feeling guilty, because I'm like, man, all this time I was like, man, me growing up, I didn't have a bad life, man. We got what we wanted for Christmas, and we got what we wanted for our birthday. And my mom, you know, she probably worked hard every day to get me what she wanted. But at the same time, I had a lot of good memories growing up with my family. It was a lot of us up under the same roof, but we wasn't broke. We wasn't broke. We wasn't rich either, but we wasn't broke. We had enough to get by, if that makes any sense. And a lot of now looking back, I understand why a lot of people in the neighborhood was like, man, y'all are rich. And I'm like, man, no, we ain't rich. And now realizing they were only saying this because a lot of my friends didn't get everything they wanted for Christmas or their birthday. They only got the bare minimum. Some of them didn't get anything. So I used to wonder why they gravitated to me a lot, is because I had a lot of things that they didn't. I grew up with a lot of things that they didn't grow up with. And I appreciate my parents. Well, let me take that back. I appreciate my mom. My dad wasn't there in my life growing up. I appreciate my mom. And if it wasn't my mom, it was my grandmother. And I also had father figures in my life, man. I had my uncles and I had my cousins who really planted good seed in me, man, to work hard, and they taught me the good values of how to be a good man or a good husband, and respect women, and to work hard every day. So when people say, man, I ain't gonna never forget where I came from, I understand that. And in some cases we shouldn't. But there are people who did not grow up, there are people who grew up that just didn't have a good childhood, man. And now I can see and I understand that. I understand that clearly, because listening to some of the stories that people tell me, man, I grew up, man. I grew up and I slept on the floor, man. It'd be days sometimes where I only ate the same thing every day, a sandwich with one piece of bread, or they only drunk water, and they didn't have like the things we take for granted. They didn't have sodas and Kool-Aid and milk and none of that stuff. They just had to deal with drinking water and eating what they could, oatmeal for breakfast and a piece of toast with probably no meat, in the morning, or cereal. Remember having to add carnation milk to water just to get a decent bowl of cereal. Me, I didn't grow up like that, man. I mean, yeah, I grew up where we had to mix water with carnation milk to make cereal, but man, we had Kool-Aid, we had sugar, we had meat, we had a 3-course meal for dinner, and we had breakfast, and we had meat with our breakfast. But just realizing some of these people didn't have that, man, and now I see the difference. Like I said, I wasn't rich, man, but I wasn't poor, and I never understood why a lot of people say, man, I want to forget where I came from, because a lot of us, man, and what I say us, I mean blacks, we grew up hard in hard times, man. They struggled back then, but by the grace of God, I didn't feel a whole lot of that struggle. So my apologies if I ever say, hey man, because I have been the one to tell people, hey man, you don't never you're never supposed to forget where you came from. I used to be the biggest one to say that, but now I kind of feel guilty for saying it. But to the people out there who I've told that and I offended, I apologize, man. And I didn't. Now that I know, and now that I'm hearing these stories, some people really want to forget where they came from. And now, me hearing this, I can understand now. I can understand. But you just gotta put on your big boy boots and just keep on rolling, man. And I hope the best for everybody. And for that young lady who I talked to, she does often, get counseling, so she can make sure she continues to be the parent she needs to be for her kids. Because like I said, she grew up in a household where, she was molested and she was left alone in the house. And we talking about an age between the age of 8 up until probably she was a teenager, and she was on her own. So she pretty much kind of raised herself. And she probably had some dark places in her life that she cared not to remember. So with that being said, man, y'all give me y'all comment, man. Y'all tell me what y'all think, man. Tell me how y'all feel when people say, man, don't ever forget where you came from. This is nothing to bash anybody. This is just my feed. This is just my opinion about people who say, don't forget where you came from. Be careful on who you say that to, man. You could be offending them. So all comments are welcome. Please keep them clean. This is another episode of The Hell You Think. Please subscribe. Please share this. And y'all be easy. Peace.